Welcome back to another Fantasy Puck video, guys. It's Chris, and first of all, I just want to take a second to apologize. Usually the weekly preview is out on Sunday. Mike and I were both super busy this weekend, so couldn't get it out until now. So I'm going to try and do my best to get through everything quickly and efficiently so you guys can make those crucial ads for this week if possible. But that being said, guys, this is your week 21 preview. Let's get right into the video. Taking a look at the best schedule for the week, it's pretty typical. The NHL likes to do this all the time. The off nights are Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. That is March 4th, 6th, 8th, and 10th. The teams that you want to target when you're streaming players this week are the Arizona Coyotes, the Calgary Flames, the Chicago Blackhawks, and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Each one of these teams have 4 games and 2 off nights. Didn't really include a lot of Chicago players, I'll be honest, for the very obvious reason that there isn't a lot to choose from. And we did get to some Leafs, even though they are a super top-heavy team. But those are the main 4 teams that we want to focus on. Any of the other teams below Boston, Columbus, Edmonton, Florida, Nashville, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, all these teams are great options as well. They play 4 games throughout the week and 1 off night. So if you can't find anybody from these teams that you like, or you're just really in particular looking for something, I would highly recommend looking at these teams available to you. In comparison, the worst schedule for this week, again, typical NHL fashion, the Tuesday, the Thursday, and the Saturday. Only 2 teams have 2 games and 0 off nights that week. This is the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Washington Capitals, and the Rangers only play 2 games as well, but they do have an off night this week, so it's not as terrible. Obviously, you don't want to ever stream anybody from these teams, especially when you only get them from 2 games. So highly recommend staying away from these teams. And if you have some players that you're able to drop for this week that don't drastically impact your team, like maybe you have like Tom Wilson, for example, from the Caps, and you're like, I need to win this week because I need to make fantasy hockey playoffs, highly recommend dropping that guy for one of our streamers for this upcoming week. So like I kind of mentioned earlier, you can't really get to some of the higher end players on teams like the Toronto Maple Leafs, who have a really good week this week in terms of their scheduling. So anybody below that 50% mark, I think, is a solid kind of area to look at. Mostly will be available to most leagues, depending on your league settings. Some leagues are obviously more shallow than others. Some leagues are obviously very deep, and you can't get to these guys. That's why we will cover some deeper players in a second. But starting us off, we have Jonathan Huberdeau. He's been very good since just basically Calgary's decided that they're going to start selling. I don't know what it is. He is line 1, power play 1, really good schedule for this week. He's really kind of picked it up. And the best thing about Huberdeau is you get that kind of combination of shot and hits. He doesn't have an insane shot volume. Everybody knows that, but he does chip in the hits category and the shot category. But he's primarily there because of his point production and his power play upside on top of that. So Huberdeau, really good pick for this week, given the schedule. Lawson Crouse is somebody, especially if you're in like a categories league, for example, and you're trying to target specific categories, shots and hits. He has a really high floor. He's been pretty solid this year offensively as well. So don't let that, kind of high floor shy away from the fact that he can chip in a couple goals and points here and there. Line 2, power play 2 in Arizona so far, 41% owned. Again, really good schedule, especially if you look to try to split your week in 2 a little bit. Definitely would recommend targeting Arizona players in the second half of the week after Wednesday, because they do have 2 off nights. So highly recommend looking at that if you need to. But Crouse is a great option in terms of shot and hit volume, and he'll chip in those scoring categories as well. Gustav Nyquist has actually been unbelievably good in Nashville. That team is absolutely rolling right now. Even though they don't have one of the best schedules for the week, I highly recommend just adding this guy to your team in general. He's been lights out. If you go look at his game log over the past 10-15 games, he's hovering around a point a game. Really good on the power play as well. A really talented playmaker. Kind of goes under the radar a little bit, but now that he's playing line 1 alongside Philip Forsberg, Ryan O'Reilly, he's really just kind of been able to chip in those specific scoring categories, and he's been really good and consistent this year, guys. And then Sam Bennett, again, not the best schedule in the week, and he does have the off night on the Monday. So if you have a delay in your ad, unfortunately, you won't be able to get him. That's on me, guys. Again, we want this video out on Sunday. Couldn't get to it this week, so we're doing our best now. But Sam Bennett has been absolutely unbelievable in terms of the peripheral stats. We praise on it pretty much every single year. His scoring has kind of been slower this year, but I think given the fact that he's just so good in terms of those kind of peripheral stats, the shots, the hits, even the blocks, and if you count faceoffs in your league, he's pretty solid in that category as well. I think he's just a solid ad overall for the week. We always recommend you guys picking him up if possible, but the scoring hasn't been as consistent as we've seen in the past. So again, keep that in mind. But again, line 2, power play 2, still a lot of upside for Bennett there. Not saying that, you know, he can't score. It's just the fact that sometimes it's a little bit more inconsistent than we've seen out of Bennett recently. Moving on to some of our deeper forward streams, Nick Schmaltz, really good. He's been lights out as of late. Center, right wing eligible, 26% owned, should be readily available to most teams. Tyler Bertuzzi is another one. Given the Leafs schedule for this week, him, Max Domi's another good one that I didn't want to include because it's just like similar ownership percentage, similar upside. That line 2, Domi's actually power play 2, but Bertuzzi is now on power play 1, and he's been unbelievable of late, just finding the back of the net finally for the Leafs. So if you're interested in a guy with some scoring upside, and he'll chip in the hits category as well, highly recommend Bertuzzi for this week. Matthew Nyes is a little bit of a lower ownership play for those of you that can't get to guys like Bertuzzi and Domi and still want to target a Leafs player for this week because of their schedule. 12% owned, left wing eligible, line 1 and power play 2, playing alongside Matthews and Marner. Again, scoring has been inconsistent. You can't really blame him just because he's first year out of the NCAA, kind of a rookie, getting used to the league. But in terms of like shot volume and hit volume, it's pretty solid. He'll chip into both those categories. So if you want somebody, any type of exposure to Matthews and Marner, I want on my team, especially in deeper leagues. So again, if you're in a deeper league, highly recommend Nyes if you're trying to target a Leaf. Dylan Guenther has been great as of late. Also, if you look at his game log, he's been actually really good in terms of his production lately as well. So if you want best case scenario, if you're in a deeper league, you go Matthew Nyes the first couple games, and then you stream Dylan Guenther for the second half of the week. Line 3 and power play 1 upside for Guenther as well. That top power play, he's getting time on now. And then Tommy Novak, also a guy that's been unbelievable on Nashville as of late. He's playing line 3, power play 1. I'm not too concerned over the fact that he's playing line 3 because his production has been so good, especially in the last 5, even 10 games. He's been honestly close to a point a game. So definitely go check out Thomas Novak if you are in a deeper league. He should be a really good ad given the schedule. On to our defensive streams. Sean Durzi, Zach Werenski are your top 2 targets. I have Durzi slightly ahead of Werenski simply because of the fact that the schedule is better. He gets one more off night, but Werenski in terms of upside and production, I think is the clear-cut number 1. So if you're in a more shallow league and defensemen are a little bit more available to you guys, I highly recommend one of those 2. And if for whatever reason any one of those guys are just available for you, I highly recommend picking them up and stashing them on your team. Torrey Krug has been really good as well in terms of those production because he's, since kind of the way that he's come back off of injury, he's been rolling on that power play 1, guys. So highly recommend grabbing him if you want somebody with a little bit more power play upside and production. If you can't get to a guy like Werenski and Durzi, again, 4 games, 1 off night. Krug's been great as of late, so highly recommend grabbing him. If you want somebody that is just simply for peripherals, and like if you're in a bangers league or if you need hits and blocks for this upcoming week, Jake McCabe is absolutely fantastic for that. Doesn't really do much in terms of offense, but those hit categories, those block categories, even a couple shots here and there out of McCabe is pretty solid. 29% owned. Doesn't get any power play time, unfortunately, but will chip in those peripheral categories, and a really good week, obviously, schedule-wise. And then JJ Moser, kind of very similar to McCabe, is he's got a little bit of scoring. I'd say a little bit more scoring upside than McCabe does, for example, because he is playing on that power play 2 for Arizona, and given their schedule for this week with 2 off nights, if you need a lower end defenseman and you're in a deeper league, he is a very solid option given the fact he gets power play time, and he'll chip in those shots, hits, and block categories as well. Not to the extent of McCabe, obviously, but still pretty solid in that block category, and he will chip in a couple shots, a couple hits here and there. So if you need a depth defenseman for this week, highly recommend JJ Moser. And then finally, guys, finishing up our preview, we have our goalie streams. Laurent Brossoit has been fantastic for the Jets as of late. The Jets are just absolutely rolling teams right now, so I highly recommend grabbing him if you need a goalie start for this week. He's probably your best bet. March 8th and March 9th, they have a back-to-back, the first game against Seattle, the next against Vancouver. Ideally, Brossoit gets to start against Seattle, and they play Hellebuck against Vancouver for the tougher matchup on the 9th. We'll see what happens with that, but highly recommend grabbing him either way. You should get at least one start out of him this week. Stolarz has been great for Florida as well. New Jersey's been struggling. I think that is just Florida going to be taking advantage of a struggling Devils team, and Stolarz should be able to start there. That's also a back-to-back for Florida. Scott Wedgwood could potentially see 2 games this week, depending on what they want to do. On the 5th, they play San Jose. Normally, we see a lot of high-end teams just play their backup against the Sharks. But if not, they do have a one half of a back-to-back on March 8th versus the Anaheim Ducks. So that's the first part of the back-to-back. We'll see what Dallas does. I'm assuming Wedgwood is going to get at least one of those starts, and I would feel confident in either one of those matchups. Calvin Pickard has been great for the Oilers as of late when needed to be. March 9th versus Buffalo, and then March 10th versus Pittsburgh is their back-to-back for the week. I'm assuming Pickard might get the start against the Sabres on the 9th, but we'll see what happens. Sometimes they just play Skinner the first half, and then Pickard just gets the latter half of the matchup regardless. And then your kind of desperation play is Kevin Lankinen against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Nashville has been really, really good as of late, but again, it's Kevin Lankinen, so who knows what's going to happen with him. 1% owned, should be readily available to everybody, and yeah, regardless, I think it's still a good matchup for the Preds, so I would feel not as confident as some of the other goalies, but still good enough to where if I needed to stream somebody, I would be okay with that. That's gonna do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Again, apologies for having this out a day late. Sometimes our schedule just kind of conflicts and we can't really do much about it, so unfortunately that's on us, but hopefully you guys enjoyed. Good luck in your week 21 matchups, and have yourselves a fantastic rest of the day.